All right. What I did originally was create the flight plan in Navigraph. I prefer to do that, and saved it in Navigraph. And I'm going to do a separate video on how to create flight plans, including using SID star charts and proper approaches and how to do that. But anyways, what you're seeing here is I loaded it into Microsoft, and it worked. It loaded the high altitude beacons okay, but when I zoom into the airport, it looked like it loaded the departure okay. Even though it doesn't show, it shows using Grizzly 231, but it is the correct departure, even though it shows a different departure. So I'm not sure, but anyways, I like to do cold and dark starts. So I set my departure to the ramp, and as soon as I did it, boom, the whole thing disappears. So I hope Microsoft can allow you to add points between or before or after, because Navigraph's a much better tool to be creating flight plans with, and I prefer to use that tool, but it makes it incredibly difficult to use both tools at the moment. This is imported from Navigraph, but as soon as you change anything, it disappears, and that's what kind of sucks. But anyways, I just reset it, and I just build it from scratch within Microsoft's tool here. I'm flying from Winnipeg International to Calgary International across Canada. It's part of I'm doing like an across Canada and back flight up through the north. But anyways, so what we'll do is select the arrival airport. After doing the departure airport, that gives you a direct GPS route. I'm going to change to high altitude airways, and that'll give me my correct waypoints for high altitude. Then I'm going to click on the airport and zoom in and change my departure to actually a parking spot rather than the runway itself. And just go back and check. I've done this before, and when I loaded it in, it didn't work, so I always zoom back in and check to make sure. Now that being said, that's a direct out. I happen to know it's actually using the Vism departure. That's because if you watch another video that I'll do soon on Navigraph, I still use Navigraph to view which departures and which arrivals to use. So that's the departure I happen to know is the one that's best for this route from having used Navigraph. There's other reasons to use Navigraph too, because you get the charts for the airports, for the taxiways, although I'll talk about that later when we arrive at Calgary, because there's also a problem with that. And it allows me to use the SID departure charts and the star charts for the approach, or for the arrival, sorry. So right now, because we reset it, it's wanting to bring me in on 17L. That's not what I had set up, so I happen to know tow tub 411 is my arrival, and approach ILS runway 11. And it looks a little different than what's Navigraph charted for me, but essentially it's the same thing. So I basically rebuilt it inside the Microsoft tool. That's okay. So we're ready to go. It's all done. I didn't waste my time in Navigraph. If you're interested, take a look at the other video I'll put up shortly. If you're watching this right away and it's not up, give me a day or two and I'll put it up. And that explains how to do this sort of similar thing in Navigraph. And the reason you want that is because then you're going to have all your charts while you're flying. You're going to be able to see your arrival chart and see what minimum or maximum altitudes you need to be at, or potentially minimum speeds when you're coming into those navigational points arriving at Calgary or wherever your arrival is. And it'll also give you your departure charts, so that you know you need to fly, heading 85 degrees to 3,000 feet until you hit this beacon, or whatever the proper procedures are for the airports. So anyways, that's all set up. We're ready to go. You might not be familiar with this, but you might want to check your weights and balances, make sure you have enough fuel. You'll see in the background here the white circle. It just got bigger. Now it's gone away. Now it's medium sized. That's actually, as you add fuel, that's showing you your potential range in the aircraft with that fuel setting. So that's neat. Not everybody knows that. And you should change your payload and your weights. Let's say if you're potentially carrying passengers and baggage, 110 pounds, that's fine. Unless your wife's with you and maybe that's 250 pounds, I don't know. Anyways, let's get back here. You can set up your flight number, your call sign, your tail number to a custom one if you like. But anyways, weights and balances is the important one. I have seen a few people in the forums say that the range isn't what it was expected to be, but that's because it's set at 50% fuel by default when you select the aircraft. So bump that up, make sure you have enough fuel, potentially even a little bit more fuel if you run into some wind or you change the weather on the way. You want to make sure you have enough fuel to hit an alternate airport if there's a problem, or at least be able to get to an emergency point. So anyways, I saved this because for whatever reason, if I screwed something up and I have to exit back out and change something, for instance the ramp or the gate or something like that, I can just load it back up and at least not start from scratch. I think a couple things do get reset when you load this up. I can't remember, but anyways, save this off and start the flight. So here we are on the ramp, and we are just getting the aircraft pre-flighted and starting it up so we can contact ATC, get a pushback. And I'm just going through some of the procedures to make sure that when I'm ready for takeoff, everything is all set how I need it to be. Turning my strobe and nav and pulse and taxi lights on because we're about to get our IFR clearance for our route to Calgary and then request taxi to Runway. I'm going to set up the Garmin G3000. I just hit the MFD switch there, which allows me to edit what I want to see on the MFD. And PFD, we're going to set up our, I like to put the, well, first of all, I'm going to switch the nav source to FMS so that we can follow our GPS. I like to put the bearing 1, nav 1, which is going to be our ILS when we get to Calgary, but as soon as I hit it, I can see that I've gotten it. I've turned my wind on. Indicator. Right now it shows no data nav 1, obviously, because it is either not set to anything local or it is yeah, so right now I'm going to set it to the ILS bearing in Calgary. Click audio nav 1, we'll click that, set that to our ILS location. I apologize whenever you see me looking back at the chair like that, that's I'm looking at my second monitor, which I have my ILS runway 11 chart on. So anytime you see me looking in the back, I'm not checking out the back seat. I am looking at my second monitor with my charts. So the ILS frequency is 110.55. And we press enter, and there we go. And that's the standby. I've already set the first one. We can just hit it by clicking switch right there, and it'll switch. But anyways, let's go back. I like to keep that screen on my comms, and this screen here, I usually keep it on MFD and cycle through my different weather or radar options while I'm flying. I think it's scattered clouds for this flight, so I'm not expecting anything. I'll probably keep it on that flight plan button the whole way so that I can monitor my next beacon. So that looks all set up. Basically right now I'm just taking a look at all the instruments, making sure I'm not forgetting something. And I'm going to open the ATC panel. And if you go to ground services, this is something else that I've noticed people are doing. They want to push back and they go there and there's nothing, there's no options. That's because you do not have clearance to taxi yet. So I'm going to tune in ground 1219 and switch to it. So you can see that. And my options are request fuel supply, but there's no pushback option. So in order to get a pushback option or anything related to your flight, like to taxi to runway or anything like that, we need to go first to Winnipeg clearance and see request IFR clearance.
Winnipeg clearance delivery Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha IFR to Calgary, ready to copy.
Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha is cleared to Calgary Airport as filed. Takeoff runway 31 climb and maintain 8,000 feet. Departure frequency is 118.00407
We just got our IFR clearance, so we'll acknowledge that.
Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha cleared to Calgary Airport as filed. Takeoff runway 31 climb and maintain 8,000 feet. Departure on 118.0
And there we go.
Dare Golf Sierra Alpha read back correct. Contact ground on 121.9.
So now we're going to switch to back to ground 121.9. Sorry if you notice there, I'm actually setting my altimeter bug first because during the IFR clearance, we got clearance to take off runway 31, climb, maintain 8,000 feet. So I'm just putting in 8,000 feet into the altimeter bug so that when we climb out, if I want to put on autopilot and do a flight level change, I can do that pretty easily. I probably won't. I'll probably do that manually. I'll fly it up to a certain altitude by myself. But anyways, now we're going to go back, tune ground at 121.9. 1219, enter or switch, there we go. And then now see I have an option to request a pushback. So I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha requesting pushback.
Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha pushback request accepted.
And I'm going to turn the parking brake off, which you want to make sure when you're requesting a pushback to turn off your brake. He will push you with your brake on, but it will be really, really slow.
Ground Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha requesting pushback tug to steer the aircraft to the left.
Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha, your request has been transmitted to the operator.
And there, he's hooked up. I'm getting my pushback, and we don't need to be pushed back very far in order to proceed out. Keep in mind there's quite a delay when you're requesting to stop and it actually stops. So.
Sierra Alpha requesting the end of pushback.
Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha request to end pushback received.
Alright, and we'll wait for him to leave.
Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha with India ready to taxi IFR.
While he was leaving, we got
Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha taxi to and hold short of runway 31 using taxiway Charlie Bravo cross runway 36 Bravo Foxtrot Hotel Echo.
We got permission to taxi from tower to runway hold short runway 31 using taxiway Charlie Bravo cross runway 36 Bravo Foxtrot Hotel Echo. So I'm looking at my charts here because I'm trying to figure out which taxiways to use to get to there. Now the one thing I notice is the Jepson charts, they're very good and accurate, but they don't always match what Microsoft Flight Sim considers those taxiways. In this case they did, so I was lucky, but as you find out when we fly into Calgary, they're not the same.
Taxi to and hold short runway 31 using taxiway Charlie Bravo cross runway 36 Bravo Foxtrot Hotel Echo Dare Golf Sierra Alpha.
So still looking at my charts, trying to figure out where I'm going. And with that, looks like these charts match well enough to get to where we're going. sometimes you can kind of figure it out by, especially when they get you or ask you to cross runways. You know, at some point you have to cross runway 36. So that's sort of an indication of, well, you know, you're going towards that runway. But we'll power up here and start our taxi. And we're going to come up to this taxiway and turn right. You want to maintain, try to maintain under 20 knots on the ground. And a nice sunrise there. Sun is coming up east from Toronto. Another thing I find with this is the taxi signs can be really difficult to read. So this taxi sign coming up on the left, the yellow is going to tell you the taxiway you're on, and because it's red, that's telling you that we're coming up to a runway. The number on the left is the runway to the left.
Sierra Alpha hold position caution, the departing generic.
Now that's C, we're on Charlie with runway. I didn't look at it, but
Hold position Dare Golf Sierra Alpha.
so they're asking me to hold position because you can see on my MFD there's a plane that just took off. We weren't crossing the runway, but they asked us to hold short regardless. We're going to turn right here on this taxiway before the runway.
Dare Golf Sierra Alpha, please acknowledge.
Roger Dare Golf Sierra Alpha.
Have our strobes on for high visibility and our taxi lights. And we're setting up our fuel selection. That just prevents you from having to flip the switch just bottom of the throttle on the floor from left to right so that you don't get a fuel imbalance in the TBM. You'll have noticed if you didn't flip that switch, eventually you'll get a warning on the multifunction display telling you that you have a fuel imbalance. If you flip that to auto, you don't have to worry about that. Some nice GAs on the left. And I've been, while we're taxiing along here, I might as well mention I spent a bit of time on the forums with on the Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 forums. And it's a shame that a lot of people are having a lot of issues with it. I actually haven't. About the only thing I see is a little bit of stutter here and there, but that's to be expected. I'm running about 30 to 60 frames a second, depending on the amount of objects. But I can't say I've got too many complaints. I mean, there's things I wish worked a different way or a different method to do with especially the charting and the setup. These are things that may come. Obviously, there's a few things with the Garmin 3000 and the G1000 that aren't working exactly how people expect them to work, to do with intercepting ILS. I know our nav works fine. I also know that vertical nav or VNav doesn't work properly. There's a few little bugs here and there, but it seems to me like the developers are on top of them. And many of those are even announced in the next update. So I'm pretty excited about the simulator. At the end of the day, very realistic. you know, and all the potential conversations about flight models, this and that. Well, I'm not flying the TBM outside of its flight envelope for the most part. If you are, then maybe that's more important to you, but I'm flying some pretty standard procedures here, in and out, ILS, VFR, and it gives you a pretty good indication of what you need to be doing, and you know, especially if you're flying into an airport that you haven't been before. This helps. It looks amazing, and it looks like it's supposed to look. I've flown over a number of airports I'm familiar with, and I can pick out areas on the ground that I know. Now we're going to hold short of the runway here and get clearance. I'm just checking my departure chart. Oh, sorry, no, we're crossing this runway. This isn't our runway, but we were just checking for traffic before we crossed, because there was a beacon that I noticed up in the top right there, and something was, I thought maybe he was on final, but he was pretty far away. So yeah, we're just taxiing to the next runway. Here's our runway coming up here. Can't wait to get a graphics card that's got a little more beef, maybe sometime in 2021 when all the NVIDIA, AMD, I'm guessing the NVIDIA is going to be the monster there, but I'll wait to see the two, and whichever one's the best of the two, I'll pick that up, and I'm betting this thing will look pretty stunning and full. It's running 4K right now, but I've got it a bunch of settings bumped down. Most on high, but it does look pretty good on ultra full 4K. I think this is about 2K right now. And here we are coming up to the runway here, so we'll hold short. Actually missed the hold short mark there, but I'll just come up to the runway here and hold short and get clearance for takeoff. So we're going to tune tower on 118.3 and request takeoff clearance IFR from tower.
Tower Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha ready for IFR departure runway 31.
Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha cleared for takeoff runway 31.
Cleared for takeoff runway 31 Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha.
And just turning the autopilot, or for the trim, turning the trim on there. And taxi out to runway, and we have clearance, so we can continue to roll out. And climb and maintain 8,000 feet on this heading. Full throttle slowly. We got plenty of runway here, so there's no need to brake and pin it and do any type of short field takeoff. There we go. Past rotate into climb, gears up. Got a bit of wind pushing us off course here, but it's fine.
Dare Golf Sierra Alpha contact Winnipeg Center on 118.0.
118.0 Dare Golf Sierra Alpha. Winnipeg Center Dair Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha is climbing through 1,900 feet for 8,000 feet.
Dair Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha Winnipeg Center continue as planned. Altimeter 29.902.
All right. The weather and the clouds look great in this too. And we're going to continue to fly. Zoom out a little bit here so we can see our course. Continue to fly up to our designated altitude. We'll get clearance probably up to, I think the flight plan was 30,000 feet. So we will continue to fly up to there, turn on autopilot at some point to take over, and do the rest of our flight plan to Calgary. So I'm going to let you enjoy the rest of the climb, and we'll pick it back up when we're approaching Calgary.
Golf Sierra Alpha climb and maintain 16,000 feet.
Climb and maintain 16,000 feet Dair Golf Sierra Alpha.
is where we're going to engage the autopilot. What I usually do on the ground is flip the autopilot switch up on the overhead console before I leave the ground, and I forgot to do that, so I was trying to engage the autopilot there and it wouldn't, so I'm like, must be the autopilot switch here, and sure enough it is. So I'll flip that on and we should be able to engage the autopilot without issue. Go turn autopilot on and flight level change, and that'll bring us up to 16,000 feet and intercept our GPS course and bring us to Calgary. Just going to crank up the airspeed a little bit here to tell it go ahead and climb as fast as you like. Oh, sorry, I thought I did that. No, I switched it to 125, which I think in the AFM for the TBM, it is the best, that's the maximum climb rate at 120 knots. Or 125 knots, I think, is maximum climb. Anyways, that's what I set it to.
Alpha climb and maintain flight level 280.
Climb and maintain flight level 280 Dare Golf Sierra Alpha.
So you'll notice here I get a master warning pressure differential. If you climb a little too fast in the TBM, you're going to get a pressure differential warning, and essentially that is the pressurized cabin can't pressurize fast enough. You're climbing faster than it can pressurize, so it's kind of warning you, saying, hey, you know, just be aware that you may need to go on oxygen, or that the pressure in the cabin is lower than you would probably like it. And if you, I'll show you what happens if you dump the cabin pressure. So now there's no pressure in the cabin, and I've got to flip on the oxygen and put my oxygen mask. I probably should have done that first, but anyway, so I'm going to flip on the oxygen. I would potentially be wearing an oxygen mask right now.
And maintain flight level 300.
And I just got permission to climb to 30,000 feet. So let's get rid of those warnings, just telling me to make sure I'm on oxygen, which I already am. So,
Dare Golf Sierra Alpha, please acknowledge.
Go to acknowledge the flight level change permission to 30,000
Climb
feet.
and maintain flight level 300 Dare Golf Sierra Alpha.
And we did that, and now you'll see the warnings flashing on the multifunction display in red, white, red, white. And what they're basically saying is that the pressure inside the cabin, controlled by that bleed, auto, or max differential. See them flashing there? So that 25,600, which is counting down, that's what the cabin is equivalent of right now. So it's the pressure in the cabinet is the equivalent of being at 25,400 feet. And that's because we dumped the pressurization in the cabin. We'd be wearing oxygen right now. That's going to keep counting down till it's below 10,000 feet. Once it's below 10,000 feet, it's safe to take your oxygen off, and the cabin pressure should maintain something like 9,500 feet, or it's essentially what it's saying is the equivalent of 9,500 feet. So that's what's happening right there. It's basically warning us, saying, hey, when we dumped it there, we dumped all the pressure in the cabin, and right now it's the pressurization equivalent of being at 24,800 feet, even though we're at close to 30,000 feet. So it's slowly counting down as it's pressurizing the cabin, and you can see it's pressurizing at a rate of 500 feet per minute. So every minute it's counting down by 500 feet, or I have the equivalent pressure of 500 less feet of altitude. So that's what's happening right there. A lot of people are confused with exactly what's going on with that pressure differential when they climb too fast in the TBM. The TBM essentially can climb faster than its pressurization system can keep up. And it's not necessarily a dangerous thing if it's below 10,000 on that gauge. Like, it may say pressure differential, but it'll say, 9,500 feet. It's fine. Just take a look at that gauge, and that's why it has that marker on there at 10,000 feet, telling you that, between 10 and 15, you should be aware that it's not the equivalent of below 10,000, which is what it should be holding. And then, of course, if it goes above 15,000 feet, like it did when I dumped it, it's going to give you the warning to be on oxygen. I think the new Garmin 1000s.
Contact Winnipeg Center on 132.25.
So contact Winnipeg Center here.
Going to 132.25 Dare Golf Sierra Alpha.
Flip it from standby, and then I'll contact Winnipeg Center.
Winnipeg Center Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha flight level 300.
So, if you see,
Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha Winnipeg Center, continue to Victor Lima Romeo as planned.
that's just slowly counting down, and we'll eventually get to the point where it's equal to at or below 10,000 feet, which is fine if you have oxygen for that. So essentially right now, if we were flying and we dumped the pressure from the cabin, we'd be wearing little nostrils or oxygen masks. The TBM has actually oxygen masks up and to the left of the pilot. On the roof, if you take a look with your, I'm doing a track IR, so that's why it's moving around so much. Whenever I look around, it moves with me. But if you take a look in your cockpit up to the left, you can see the masts up there. And with that, if you've been watching the whole thing, we are now at flight level 300 and probably have an hour and a half or so ahead of us of flying en route. So I'm going to skip the video ahead here to our approach for our arrival chart. As soon as we hit our first beacon on the arrival chart for this route, we'll pick it back up. We're back, and if you take a look at the multifunction display in the center there, you can see we're about to hit our UDPAV. I think that's a V, but anyways, that's our first navigation point. If you look at our arrival chart that we chose to fly into Calgary, it is one of the incoming paths to the first beacon there.
Air Golf Sierra Alpha traffic is 1 o'clock, 4 miles at flight level 285 generic. Report them in sight.
Okay, so we just got a report of some traffic at flight level 280, 28,000 feet, off to 1 o'clock. There it is. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's right between the pillar and the right side of the screen.
Air Golf Sierra Alpha traffic in sight.
So we report them that, yeah, we can see them. We're not going to hit them. They're not going to hit us. We're aware that they're there. We're flying really close. Another reason to report them in sight is that the ATC might want to know sort of their location. Usually they just want to let you know that they're there, and vice versa. That aircraft will report us in sight if it sees us. And it's flying in the same direction as we are. We're just flying much quicker than it. Okay, so we're a little bit more than halfway to Burco. I know they're going to be asking us to descend soon. I know that according to the arrival chart, you have to fly over Burco Nav Point above 16,000 feet. But after that, we have to hit a nav 8 at 8,000 feet. It has to be passed at 8,000. So we're going to be descending soon. This is where I'll pick up for the rest of the video so that you can watch our descent and ILS approach and landing.
Sierra Alpha descend and maintain flight level 220.
There we go. Descend, maintain 22,000 feet.
Maintain flight level 220 Air Golf Sierra Alpha.
And if you're not familiar with flight levels or altitudes, usually when you're talking about low altitude routes, you're going to say 12,000 feet or 10,000 feet or 10,000 feet, for instance. But when you're above 18,000 feet, you're going to use flight levels. So flight level 180 is 18,000 feet. So we're descending to maintain flight level 220, which is 22,000 feet. So I've just put that into the, I've used the vertical or the altitude select bug, selected 22,000 feet, and then I throttled back. And when I throttle back, of course, the plane can't maintain its speed, so it noses down to maintain the vertical speed I selected in the vertical speed bug. Just above my speed indicator at the top, you see it in blue, 224, so I told the flight director that I'd like to go no faster than 224 knots descending. So right now we're descending fairly quickly, 3,500 feet per minute or something like that. Probably right through that cloud right there. You can see all these minimum or maximum altitudes. That's why the arrival charts are so great, because well before you hit these, you know that you're going to be getting a flight level change request from ATC, because these beacons require you to either be above a certain altitude to potentially fly over or around terrain, or maybe they need you to be below a certain altitude or speed, or go around here or there for noise restrictions. So anyways, the arrival charts tell you all this information, and I have one up on my second monitor for this exact arrival, so I knew there'd be a flight level request coming soon from ATC. And we're about to go through that cloud, so I'm just kind of checking my de-ice settings. There hasn't been any precipitation going while we climbed out, although we're in another province now, but that should be okay. It's a consideration anyways that when you're going through clouds like this. Oh, that looks a little heavy though. There might actually be precipitation in these clouds, and then we may get some icing. Probably should have thought of that before my descent, because these things don't warm up instantly. I'm not sure what the system is in the TBM. It's probably a glycol system that sort of releases glycol over the wing surfaces. Should be fine there. This looks kind of fluffy. This is why instruments are so important in flight. As pretty as that is, if we look forward, we can't see a thing. Oh, we're getting a little bit of icing. So there's a little bit of precipitation in these clouds. Probably should have turned the icing system on. You can see it at the corners of the window. Pick up a little bit of precipitation from the cloud, and then of course from at the altitude that we're at, it's much cooler, and it freezes over, and it absolutely affects your flight handling characteristics of the plane. It can increase your stall speed. So if you think that you're doing an approach at 85 knots and there's uneven surface of ice on the wing, you could stall out at 91 knots, for instance. And a little bit of icing, so we'll flip all these on here. Deframe. The ice light is just a light on the side of the plane that shines on the wing, and it's by habit I kind of flip all those lights on, but it's only for nighttime really. But when you can't see the wing, you flip the ice light on, and you can see your wing pretty clearly and see if there's any ice buildup on it.
Air Golf Sierra Alpha descend and maintain 16,000 feet.
And there's our 16,000 feet descent.
Descend and maintain 16,000 feet to Air Golf Sierra Alpha.
I believe it is Burco. We need to pass over 16,000 feet. So once we pass Burco, we can go under 16,000 feet, and we'll probably get a request to do so. But we're plenty high now. We're going to be well over 16,000 feet when we pass over Burco. And for the, let's see here,
WestJet
probably
672, you are 8,200 feet above your assigned altitude. Descend and maintain 10,000 feet.
oh, WestJet. All right, so for the rest of the descent, I will be quiet so you guys can enjoy it, and I will pick it back up just before we are going to intercept our ILS.
Golf Sierra Alpha, contact Edmonton Center on 133 decimal tree.
Going to 133 decimal tree Dare Golf Sierra Alpha. Edmonton Center Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha 16,100 feet.
Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha Edmonton Center, continue to tow up as planned. Altimeter 29.902. Golf Sierra Alpha, descend and maintain 8,000 feet.
Descend and maintain 8,000 feet Dare Golf Sierra Alpha.
Golf Sierra Alpha, contact Calgary approach on 123.85.
Going to 123.85 Dare Golf Sierra Alpha. Calgary approach Dair Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha is at 14,000 feet, descending 8,000 feet.
Dair Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha Calgary approach continue to Epic as planned. Altimeter 29.92. Sierra Alpha, you are 8 miles north. Descend and maintain 6,500 feet. Expect ILS runway 11 approach via Keysill transition. Cleared to Keysill.
Descend and maintain 6,500 feet. Expect ILS runway 11 approach via Keysill transition. Cleared to Keysill Day or Golf Sierra Alpha.
And if you're following along, we're not ready to pick up the ILS yet, but this is why it's so important to read back your instructions to ATC, because I was just instructed to descend, maintain 6,500 feet, but I, you know, going over how fast I'm going and needing to descend, plus I was looking at my another chart that had 6,000 feet on it, so I heard 6,000 feet even though it was 6,500 feet. When you read that back, you can see I set 6,000 feet in the altimeter bug instead of 6,500. So I'm going to be at the incorrect altitude here in a moment without recognizing it. I think I'm descending to 6,000 feet, and when I read it back, and if I had have actually been talking to ATC rather than through the panel here that talks back to ATC through commands, I would have actually said during my readback, descend, maintain 6,000 feet, and ATC would have picked up on the fact that that was wrong and corrected me. But because I'm just selecting a panel to say, hey, tell ATC this, ATC's not there to... I did the readback correctly, in other words. I read back, descend, maintain 6,500 feet. I wasn't listening to my readback because it's become habit to press the command to send the readback. But ATC is going to inform me pretty soon that I'm at the incorrect altitude, and when they do that, at first I'm thinking, oh, my inches in mercury is wrong. 29 or decimal 9 or 2 is what it's supposed to be. But when they say I'm off by 500 feet, I'm like, no, that would have to be a dramatic difference in inches mercury on the altimeter for me to be out 500 feet. So...
Air Golf Sierra Alpha, you are 500 feet below your assigned altitude.
And there it is.
Climb and maintain 6,500 feet altimeter, 29 or decimal 9 or 2.
So I hear 29 or decimal 9 or 2. I check that.
Climb and maintain 6,500 feet, Day or Golf Sierra Alpha.
That's correct, so I know I've just been, you know, I must have screwed that up. So we put that in, do a flight level change, and I give it a little bit of throttle so that the TBM has enough power to climb while we're in our turn here. That's not a big deal, 500 feet. TBM picked that up in no time, and we're so far up from the airport right now, we haven't even trapped the ILS yet. Again, sorry for the view of the headrest, but whenever I look over to my second monitor to check my arrival or ILS chart, that's where the track IR thinks I'm looking, is at the headrest. As fast as the TBM is, I like to slow it down a little bit on approach so that I have plenty of time to look at my charts, make sure that I'm on course and everything's set up. I believe the arrival chart here is maximum speed of 210 knots, so I probably could be going a little bit quicker than I am, but because I was recording this for upload, I figured I'd have more instruction to do than I could do if I was moving along at 200 knots. So you can see too on the heading indicator in the middle bottom of the primary flight display. We've got the pink navigation, that's our GPS or FMS, and we've got the blue. There's two blues. There's one blue which is a heading bug, which you can flip for the autopilot if you turned heading mode on the autopilot. But I'm talking about the blue arrow. There's a blue arrow that's pointing 90 degrees to the left right now of my FMS, which is my pink, which just switched. So here it is a little bit closer. So that's my FMS or GPS. That's that course right there on the multifunction display, and the ILS is the blue. That's what we're going to trap for the ILS, for the glide slope. And just so you know, glide slope is always ILS, glide path is for navigation or RNAV. Easiest way to remember that is ILS, the S in the ILS is for glide slope. So because we have, we did this actually before we left or departed Winnipeg, we tuned the ILS into our Nav 1 or Location 1. So it was all ready to go. As soon as it picked up a signal, it saw that just at the bottom to the left. We put it in the bearing 1 when we set up the
Air Golf Sierra Alpha descend and maintain 5,100 feet.
So flight level.
Descend and maintain 5,100 feet. Air Golf Sierra Alpha.
5,100 feet. Hit the flight level change and we'll pull the power back a little bit. And our we're on course with our GPS, and it will eventually swing around and meet with our ILS track, and that's when we will switch over to the ILS. Because the ILS is tuned in Nav 1 to the left of the altimeter indicator, you can see it white G with a triangle below it. That's indicating that the glide slope is tuned in, and we are below it at the moment. The triangle there says that the glide slope is above us, and it'll always be above you if you're coming in from such a far distance like this, because it goes off on a certain degree angle from the airport and goes straight up into the sky until the signal is lost. Personally, I like trapping it from below, but if you're coming in on a proper approach, you're always going to be trapping it from below. And as we swing around, closer and closer to be in line with the runway, you can see that our pink indicator for our GPS and our ILS indicator are starting to align. They'll be on top of each other when we finish our turn here. And slow down to 100 or so knots. We have one set of flaps down already, and we're going to turn it down to full flaps for landing. The landing gear, as you saw, is down. And we're going to throttle up a little bit here. We want to be above 85 knots on approach, but essentially, if I'm not mistaken, the TBM is an 85 knot approach, but many times I'm approaching at 120 knots or more when I'm this far out. I'm not this slow, this far out. This gives me more time to look at the display and zoom in like this for you, so that I can point things out. And at this point, we're not on the glide slope yet, but at this point we're, the autopilot is maintaining 5,100 feet, and we are just sort of feathering the throttle up and down to sort of be above 85 knots. But you can see that triangle there just below the G to the left of the altimeter display. It's we're under the glide slope. When we start intercepting the glide slope, that triangle will come down. Yeah, you'll see this later, I'll explain it, but we're in a good speed, 90 knots. If we get too fast, we feather the throttle back a bit. get too slow, give it a little bit of throttle, and just let it maintain 5,100 feet and intercept that glide slope. Now switch to lock 1 and hit approach on, and when we do that you can see the G has turned green, and GS, when we're on the glide slope, that'll turn green. So you can see nav mode, we can flip it back and then flip the approach back on. The nav mode, if it was on, would follow the lock 1 beacon, but it wouldn't, when it intercepts the glide slope, it won't vertically change altitude. So you'll just, if you find your green bug there to the left altimeter passing the center of the altimeter where your altitude is displayed and going below you, and you're still flying at the same altitude, most likely it's because you're navigating the line towards the airport, but it hasn't intercepted the glide slope properly. You didn't arm the approach properly. So right now the approach is armed. So it's armed. We know that because it says GS in the top. Anything that's white up there is armed, but hasn't been activated yet. And just mosey along, 90 knots, 5,100 feet, waiting for that, waiting to intercept that glide slope. And you can see, if you look carefully, the green triangle is just starting to make its way down a little bit. It starts very, very slowly, and then as you intercept it, it centers itself somewhat quicker. So you can see it dropping. There's the runway right there. We just got visual of the runway. There's the runway that we were looking at before when we looked at the left wing, but there's the runway we're landing on. And off to the right there out the window is Calgary, but there it is. There's the glide slope bug making its way down to center, and you'll see when it hits the center there, that's when we'll start losing altitude.
Sierra Alpha, you are 7 miles northwest of Calgary.
And there's Calgary off to the right out the window there.
118.4 when inbound.
So we're going to switch to inbound approach.
Tower on 118.4 Dare Golf Sierra Alpha. Calgary Tower Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha 6 miles northwest inbound ILS runway 11 approach.
So we've just contacted Tower.
Dare Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha Calgary Tower. Cleared ILS runway 11 approach. Altimeter 29.9 to wind 254 at 8.
Okay, so since Tower was talking,
Dare Golf Sierra Alpha cleared to land runway 11. Wind 254 at 8.
let's acknowledge that.
Cleared to land runway 11 Dare Golf Sierra Alpha.
So as you can see, when we intercepted the glide slope, it had to nose down in order to maintain the proper altitude towards the runway. And because we nosed down, without changing our throttle settings, we sped up to 105 knots or whatever it was. So be mindful of that when you intercept the glide slope, you can see the GS on the top middle of the PFD. Anything up there that's green, the autopilot's taken care of. Well, the GS right now, we're on glide slope. So when it nosed down, we sped up. If you want to maintain a certain speed, which you should, figure out what the proper approach speed for your aircraft is, you're going to want to throttle down as you get closer and closer to the runway, much like you would land on a VFR, where you're throttling down to lose altitude, not nosing down or flying into the runway. You want to throttle down here and get a proper approach speed, because as you throttle down, the flight director or the autopilot is going to pull the nose up a bit, and you're going to have the proper angle of attack to land the airplane. You don't want to be landing the airplane with the nose gear first. So as you see, I'm throttling back. You can hear that. Just looking around, because these approaches are very pretty. This is a pretty good looking sim. You can see the 2 red, 2 white lights That indicates that we are on a good glide slope. If you were doing a VFR approach, you could use those lights. Those lights are much like an aircraft carrier. They're not. It's not the ILS system that controls them. And here we come in. We are 87, 86 knots, 85, throttling on back a little bit. Throttle up. We don't want to stall at the last second. And we will disengage the autopilot. Flare. And throttle down. Nice soft landing. Nothing to report in the flight log on that landing other than perfect. And with this amount of runway ahead of us, there's no need to hump on the brakes. Just use the rudder pedals to steer down the runway nicely and visualize a taxi exit that we want. We'll brake here a little bit so we can catch this.
Sierra Alpha turn, next taxiway.
Alright, we'll turn off here. Now, this is where I'm going to be looking at the back seat a little bit here while I check I have the chart up for the airport, and
Air Golf Sierra Alpha, contact ground on 121.9er.
We're going to contact ground.
121.9er for Air Golf Sierra Alpha.
Acknowledge the switch to ground frequency first from the tower, switch to ground, and contact ground.
Calgary ground, Air Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha taxi to the gate.
Air Alpha Sierra X-Ray Golf Sierra Alpha taxi to gate to using taxiway Foxtrot Bravo cross runway 17 right Foxtrot Kilo cross runway 29er Kilo.
Alright, so
Taxiing to gate to using taxiway Foxtrot Bravo cross runway 17 right Foxtrot Kilo cross runway 29er Kilo Air Golf Sierra Alpha.
Alright, so this airport taxiway map does not match my instructions. So sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. In this case it doesn't. That's too bad, because now I got to figure out where I'm going, and it doesn't look like there's listed any gates on here either on my Jepson maps. So I have no idea where I'm going. So right there we are on taxiway F. So we're going to then, we need to turn on Bravo cross runway 17R. So easiest thing to know here is that we have to cross 17R using Bravo. So that's okay. So the one in front of us is Bravo. If you looked at that sign there, it said we were on taxiway Foxtrot, and Bravo is left and right. But did we go left or did we go right? So right after that we need to cross runway 17R. Okay, so we just need to go the direction of the runway, which is, oh shoot, it's the other way. So I turned the wrong way. It's okay, I'll turn around right here. So the only indication that I have of where I'm going at that point, because it's the easiest indication for me there was I had to cross 17R, and 17R was me turning right, not left. But I'm looking at the map and it's upside down on the MFD compared to where I'm turning, and I just got turned around. So we're on Bravo now. We have to cross 17R. And look for Foxtrot. And according to my Jepson maps here, I can't find Foxtrot or Kilo. So again, the only indication I have of where we're going is that afterwards we are so I'm trying to pick up these taxi signs here. We should be on Bravo. Yeah, Bravo. And that's telling me 35 left is left and 17 right. Runway is to my right. We have permission to cross this runway, so we can go ahead and do that. This is our 17R cross. And we're looking for Foxtrot. The problem is I find these signs very difficult to pick up and read, especially while you're taxiing. And I cannot pick this up on the map anywhere. I don't know where it is. So this might be, excuse my language, a bit of a shit show. No taxi signs. So we can only go left or right here. And my Jepson maps doesn't really give me an indication of where, but we're got to cross runway 29, so that is right. So this must be Foxtrot. Anyways, I have no, from looking at this map, I have no idea where the gate is. After crossing runway 29, we have to pick up Kilo and then look for gate 2, and I have no clue where it is. And it doesn't show. I'm really hoping that Microsoft can kind of allow you to load the airport maps or the star or SID maps, etc. in the G3000 like you can. That'd be really cool. So that, see, those taxi signs are really hard to read while you're, like, I can't see the ones on the right there. But it'd be really cool to be able to pull up the chart for this airport that is, I mean, the airport layout is identical here, but it's just that all the taxiways are labeled wrong. I'm going to assume the Jepson chart is correct. So here we are crossing runway 29, and we are on, was that Foxtrot Kilo? Was that an FK? Maybe this is Foxtrot Kilo, but either way, this is not Foxtrot Kilo on a Jepson map. So you know what, we're just going to taxi around a little bit here. Maybe we'll find it, maybe we won't, but enjoy the view. And it's too bad because when you taxi to parking or taxi to a gate in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, it's pretty neat. There's a guy waiting for you, and he directs you in left and right, tells you when to hold, stop, and as soon as you park in front of him properly, it then stops. Like it knows you've made it, and it ends the I cannot read that. Is that Delta left and right? I don't know. Between the track IR moving around too much, and I'm guessing those will be easier to read if I can get this running at 4K with another graphics card, but right now I cannot read those taxi signs. The airport sure looked good for these. This isn't an airport that was a premium airport. This is just what the airports look like. I mean, this is a better looking airport than most other flight sims I've played, even their premium products. This is just sort of some general aviation buildings on the far side of the airport. The actual terminal and gates for these airports are quite a ways away on the other side of 2 runways, so we're not near that area, but those areas look incredible. You can see them off to the right as I swing around here. I think I'm gonna have to turn around. And I cannot request taxi to parking once I've requested taxi to gate, which is too bad. Because the parking area for the general aviation is outlined here. If I could get clearance to taxi to parking. Now I'm just driving around. I could probably find an exit here and just drive to the hotel. There's the terminals over there with a bunch of heavies sitting at the gates. Those are different gates that I'm looking for. I'm looking for the general aviation gates. Yeah, I'm blown away by the level of detail that every area of this has. Every airport that I go to looks great. Alright, I skipped about 15 minutes there while I just sat there trying to go through the charts, but no, that was not incorrect. They're just wildly different. So I think this might be the area over here, but I'm not 100% sure, but it doesn't matter. I'm going over here, I'm going to find a spot. If I don't see the guys directing me in, I'm just going to park somewhere. Figured I'd go over here and check this area out anyway. This is the only area I can think it can be because it's asked me to, the runway, if you look at my multifunctional display on the left of my aircraft, it asked me to cross that runway. To get to the other gates on the other side, I'd have to cross another runway, and they would have given me instruction to do that. And I've already driven around the sort of general aviation buildings on the other side. There's nothing there. So the only place there are planes, and there's trucks in here that look like, you know, supply trucks and stuff. So this must be the gate. I mean, there's other main gates for heavies, but that's not where they would direct me in a small aircraft like this. Plus, I would have to cross 2 more runways to get over there. So most likely I would have had to request, there's 2 guys standing over there, but usually there's, you're looking for 3 guys whenever you taxi to where you're going, and one of the guys has, is going to direct you in, and then there's another guy with one of the push trucks, and another guy that's just standing around, probably a manager. These look like gates. That's why they have the trucks there. She looks busy. But I'm just going to drive to the end here, and if I don't see an obvious place to pull in or a gate 2 marker of any type, I'm just going to park it and shut her down. But it is nice when you fly into an airport, or if you get used to an airport and their taxiways and where their general aviation parking areas are, and you pull in and there's someone with the cones directing you in. It's really cool at night because they're all lit up, and you know, it's just very realistic. It's pretty neat with everyone on the apron. Someone's standing over there, someone's standing here. I don't know, I'm gonna park it right here. Well, anyways, I hope you took something from this. There was, I don't know, a half dozen questions or so people were asking about flying SIDS and star charts and arrivals and approaches using ILS and the Autopilot and the TBM, pressure differential. I know it's a long video. I'm going to put the chapters in there so that whatever your question was, you can skip ahead. I don't fully expect anyone to watch this whole thing, but I hope you got something from it and enjoyed.